So, welcome back everyone to another episode of What's Up Startup. Today's episode is special because we not only have one but two entrepreneurs with us. I take immense pleasure in introducing all of you to Miss Yashoda and Miss Ria, founders of WhoWooFresh.com, an e-commerce website to meet all your flower needs. And yes, as you guessed by their names, they're sisters. It is an immense pleasure to have you here, ma'ams, and on behalf of the entire entrepreneurship cell of Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management, I'd like to extend the warmest of welcomes.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you for having us.
And ma'am, without much ado, let's get started. So if you could please tell our viewers a little about WhoWooFresh.com.
I can get started. We started WhoWoo about a year and a half ago. What we're really catering to is the traditional flower demand in India. So the flowers that are usually used for puja, like jasmine garlands, chrysanthemums, roses, these different things. The flower industry in India and bringing efficiency into it.
All right. So the flower industry is something that not a lot of our viewers might be familiar with. So if you could tell us about that and how you came up with the idea of WhoWooFresh.
We've grown up around flowers our entire life. Our father started his rose business the year I was born. So flowers were a huge part of our life always. And kind of watching him set up his business, starting with a small farm near Bangalore and then growing it into a global company is what kind of inspired us to start off on our own. And what we really saw, especially, going to college, coming back and exploring different areas in business was that while flowers, when it comes to bouquet flowers and gifting, that industry had developed quite a bit. There are a lot of players, we hear about ferns and petals and so many other localized players that have come up as well. But traditional flowers, which are in fact a much more common use case, we see them everywhere, whether it's in cabs and people's homes, all of that. And it's a very recurring use case. There hasn't really been any sort of development in that industry itself. We're focused on the local markets. The supply chain is very fragmented. Farmers don't get fair prices. And there's a lot that could change, a lot of innovation. There's a lot of scope for innovation that really wasn't explored by anyone, which is kind of how we got started. And, when we started off and you would say flowers, everyone would be like, oh, bouquets. But it was such a different thing for people to think that we were actually selling these puja flowers, something that you're so used to, but never really saw as a brand. So we really wanted to build a consumer brand around this flower use case, right? And provide fresh, high quality products to customers, especially because it's been used for such an emotional need, which is prayer.
Right, ma'am. And that's such a
Just to add to that as well, I think what really surprised us when we first started doing our research is that we had this hunch that it was a huge market, but then actually finding out that it's a $1.2 billion market just in India, which is almost 3 to 4 times what the bouquet flower industry is. I think that's kind of what convinced us that clearly this market needs a new solution.
And ma'am, I believe that somehow flowers are something that everyone has a local neighborhood shop that they go to and get it on the day of the puja itself. So how do you plan on tackling those, or what's your strategy to grow your consumer base, get them to shift to e-commerce?
For us, when we looked at the brand as well, right, it was that the product was so important, building a product that's high quality, a brand that customers can trust. And, when they're buying the flowers, it's not, am I going to get cheated today or am I going to get bad flowers? But it's a beautiful experience, the same way that the use of the flowers is so beautiful. So we've really focused on then using that product to be distributed to different ways. One is, of course, our website. A lot of our customers come from outskirts of cities where they don't have these local shops. So they went from having flowers in their houses, moving, and then not having access at all, right? So our website and our partners that we work with, various grocery apps like Big Basket, Milk Basket, all of them cater to these customers. But other than that too, we're really not looking at ourselves as in competition with your local flower wala. But what we're really looking at is now if we can provide a better product to even that local vendor, he can provide a better product to the customer. So we are working on building micro franchisees and distributor networks where we're working with these local shops, we're working with neighborhood people, also, micro entrepreneurs that want to start off something on their own within their area, within their apartment complex, and using them to distribute this product. So then every customer has access to these flowers, which is what we really care about.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, something that's really been important to me and Yashoda from day one is that, you can go to your local kirana shop or even a roadside shop and you can pick up, a Coke bottle or Lay's, and with food stuff, where this health and freshness really matters a lot. And if you can do that with food stuff, why can't you do that with other fresh produce, like flowers, for instance? And that's why the key innovation at the center of our company as well has been, how do we extend that flower's shelf life? And then, you can sell it through your local vendors, your kirana shops, your big basket, milk basket, whatever it is.
That's a really unique way to go about it. And ma'am, what are your views on the farm bills, the protest against the new farm bills? Has it affected the flower industry as well?
It's not really catering to the flower industry. It's more towards the agri stuff. So I think it makes more sense for someone within that field to come.
All right, ma'am.
Unless you.
And ma'am, since we're in a COVID pandemic phase, and everything from even packets to every small little thing is being sanitized. So how do you think that the demand for flowers has been affected, especially during this period?
We actually saw a huge surge in our orders during this period. And it's really interesting, right? Because a lot of the change that's happening in customers' mindsets as well is more trust towards brand, knowing where your product is really coming from. And that's something we've emphasized from day one. Like, all our flowers get disinfected the moment they enter our facility, and we get them directly from farmers. So, we know the source of the flowers, and then the packaging happens within our facility. So I think all of those things gave our customers a lot more trust. And that was something that they were looking for. So we saw a huge growth in that sense. And I think, the last 6 months during this entire COVID phase has been where we have increased the size of our company by about 6 times. So in that way, COVID has been a blessing, of course, but it reminds us to be mindful about, catering to these things that the customers really care about, providing a product that's continuing to cause delight to them, despite, the other complications and actually for them to receive the products.
Right, ma'am. And I think that's a very good thing that COVID came as a blessing in disguise. Only very few people can say that. And so, ma'am, our next question is that you both you went abroad to study. You were at very prestigious universities, and I'm sure that you would have easily gotten into the corporate world. And so, what motivated you to start your own venture, and how was your journey?
That's a great question. I'll speak for myself, and then Ria can answer for herself. I always knew I wanted to come back to India. And I think a big part of that was even seeing our parents set up their business. Because I saw that there's so much potential here, right? Like, especially going to the US and being there, and you see so many standardized processes, things that are so common for people that we struggle so much to make it happen here. It just felt so frustrating to think that why could that not be done in India? So even studying abroad was for that exposure, was for that extra learning of, stepping away from your comfort zone and being in a new place. But I always knew I wanted to come back. I actually had a job in KPMG. I worked there for a bit in the US, but that was mainly for that experience so that I could kind of come back and do something on my own here. I think it's a very exciting ecosystem, the Indian ecosystem. There's so many startups coming up. There's so much like passion and enthusiasm that people have, right? Like, people want to do things, and there's so much that needs to be done as well. So I definitely found it way more exciting and more impactful to be back here. So I came back, I think, as soon as I graduated, I did my master's in the US as well. I immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the same reasons for me as well. Like, growing up for us, entrepreneurship was never like, it wasn't like a foreign concept in any sense, because it was kind of just a given in our family that, of course you're going to kind of go out there and do it by yourself. And, I think our parents would have been really sad if we said we only wanted to work with them, or, we didn't want to do something of our own. And like Yashoda said, I think the ecosystem here is so exciting. Like, I was in Silicon Valley. So, I was kind of in that startup atmosphere as well. But I still feel like Bangalore has so much of that energy, and you have such an outsized impact here as well. Just the industry that we're in, we're able to work with so many women who haven't really had formal employment before. You're able to make a real difference in people's lives, as opposed to that 1 or 2% efficiency gain that you see in a lot of startups in more mature economies. So I think that's what's really exciting about India.
That's a wonderful thing. And do you think that what were some of the challenges that you faced while you were setting up, or even after that?
I think every day is a challenge in that sense. But I think the main things is kind of just understanding the ecosystem and delving into it, right? Like I'd done a lot of research before we started, but really taking that step and trying it out without really knowing if it's going to work or not. And something that I learned over time, and I think I can speak for Riya and me, we both learned over time, is really tapping into the mentors that are around you and looking for support. I think the biggest challenge is when you're starting off, you feel alone, right? Of course, there's that excitement that you're starting something new, but it was like, oh, we are doing this, and if it fails, and it's on us. But over time, especially when we went through our accelerator program with Techstars as well, something that was really emphasized and became very emphasized in our lives after was mentorship, and really looking into that support system, asking for help when you need help, having conversations, even if, it's not like you need something out of that conversation, but kind of expands your mindset. I think that has really helped us grow and pivot whenever we had to.
Mm-hmm. I think Yashoda answered most of that. But I think one kind of interesting thing is, because we're creating a category in a lot of ways, there was that question of, why traditional flowers, and how do you even size this market and things like that, which I think every entrepreneur will face in some way. Like, someone's always going to be like, why are you solving for this? We just had to kind of answer it a little bit earlier.
And what do you think, according to you, if you were in the US, would you have not faced some of the challenges that you faced, or did coming back to India help you overcome some challenges that you would have faced in the US?
Okay, I think that's an interesting hypothetical. I think it's impossible to answer in a sense, because you never know, right? You couldn't really set up a puja flower company in the US, I think, as effectively as you could do it here. But I mean, everyone faces a challenge at the end of the day, because if you're not facing a challenge, then obviously it's too easy, and 100 people are going to try to do the same thing. But yeah, I don't know, Yashita, if you want to add something to that.
Like, entrepreneurship has its own challenges wherever you're doing it. Of course, a lot of things in terms of, the way the ecosystem is set up are more mature in the US. So of course, those advantages. At the same time, the kind of disruption that you can have in India may not exist there, right? And it's a saturated market as well. A lot of people are trying the same thing that you might be trying. So it differs in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I think each place comes with its own thing, and you have to figure it out. I guess that's part of life, right? And especially part of entrepreneurship as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So you find something passionate enough where you're willing to go through the challenges. Even when you're starting off, right? It's important to have that action wherever you're going. It may not be a product that you personally use. It's great if you use it, but even if you don't, as long as you're passionate about actually coming up with that solution and doing it over time, then I think you're able to kind of go through it. Because if you don't have that passion in the beginning and you're like, I'm just going to do this to make some money, you don't know when you're going to make money, if you're going to make money, and how long this entire journey is going to take. Just having that clarity in your head helps a lot.
So ma'am, like you said that being an entrepreneur every day is a challenge. So what is that one thing for both of you that makes you get up in the morning and get to work?
Personally, I think for me, a big part of it is doing this with Riya. Keeping, sisters aside, just as co-founders too, right? Having that support system that, like, if I'm waking up and finding this hard, like, I have another person that is always going to be my cheerleader and who's going to believe in this idea as much as I do. And I think that really helps. And you end up balancing each other out, right? Like, sometimes when you might be doubtful about something working, your co-founder has your hand and is like, no, we can do this, and the other way around as well. And I think that is something that really motivates me and our entire team as well, right? Like when I see someone really excited about a new client we're onboarding, or how many orders we're getting, like it was so nice during Diwali. Of course, our orders spike up quite a bit, and it's something that we discuss in the corporate team, we discuss with the supervisors, and then someone in our packing team comes up to us and she's like, no, how many orders are there? So then I was telling her how many orders she needs to do, and then she was like, no, but I want to know how many total orders are we doing today? Like, did we cross our, goal for the day? And she was so excited, even though it meant more work for her and for the entire team. But it was, you connect with that immediately, and you realize that everyone has the same goal to make this a success. And honestly, like when you have that kind of motivation, anything will get you out of bed.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the same thing, but like for a different reason, because Yashoda is my sister in my whole life. I'm kind of a night owl and she's a morning person. So quite literally in the morning I wake up and I'm like, I'm sure she's been awake for 5 hours already. Like I need to get to the office. But jokes aside, I really do think that helps. And I think, a lot of investors tell you get a co-founder, and, if you can't convince a co-founder, then you're unlikely to be able to convince anyone else. Obviously, it's not true for every startup, but I think it's been very true for both of us. I mean, apart from the fact that we're sisters, we also work together in our family business. And having a co-founder, I think, is such a strength, especially in our business, which does have, quite a bit of operations, and then it has quite a bit of a tech thing and, product development that we have to do. I just think it would have been impossible for like one person to do it, or do it well. And our team, because as soon as you get like 30 people who are like, I believe in what both of you are doing, and I'm going to give you my time and my effort and my belief, it's not that you can't afford to fail, because I think you never kind of want to fail before that either, but you have to believe in yourself, right? Like at the end of the day, like one day you can sit down and be like, oh, I'm so tired and this is so hard. But then you look at those 30 faces and you're like, no, like it's not just me in this anymore. I have buy-in from all of these people and your customers who are believing in you, and especially the startup. And because we both are so young, I think we really take that belief with a huge amount of responsibility and saying we have to deliver on this, because there's a lot of people who believed in us, and it has to be for a good reason.
That's right. That's completely right. So I'm sure as you would have heard, there's this common notion that don't start a venture, don't get into business with your family or relatives. So how is I'm sure I can see that it's not true for you, but if you would like to say something about that or change that notion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it totally depends on the person that you're doing this with and your own mindset, right? Making sure that you're very clear in your communication from the beginning. Whoever that co-founder is, whether it's a friend or relative or even a stranger, like as long as you have those like fundamentals in place, I think that's really important. Like growing up, if you asked me had I ever start a business with Ria, I would have probably laughed about it because we were so different. But as we grew up, we really worked on channeling those differences. If we had the same kind of thoughts or the way we work, then we wouldn't really be adding that much value. It's just that whenever I'm tired, she'll be doing the work. When she's tired, I'm doing it. But our strengths are very different. But what's important is that we have that common vision. If we're not even able to agree on what we want to see this company becoming, right, then of course it would never work. But because we have that, and then we have that trust in each other, we're able to question each other without feeling like the other person's ego would get hurt or, feeling that you're kind of putting the other person down. At the same time, that both of you have the company's well-being in mind, right? It's not about either of you. It's about this company. So you do whatever works for that. So you figure out like how to kind of segregate that. And if one person doesn't agree with the other, that's fine as long as it works for the company. And I think, of course, it's a constant learning, right? We're constantly learning how to communicate better, how to build up processes and separate responsibilities between each other. But when you're open to that kind of thinking, I think that's the most important. And then you can make any sort of co-founder relationship work.
Just to add to that, in college, one of the things that people would say is don't room with your best friend because, best case scenario, you have a good roommate. Worst case, you lose a friend. And I think a big part of that is that when you're really close to someone, whether it's a friend or a sister or a family member, you just kind of assume that they know whatever's in your mind, and so you don't have to have a conversation to make anything clear. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of relationships, especially in business or working together on projects, kind of suffer. And one thing that me and Yashoda did at the very beginning, very explicitly, was like, we don't want this company. I mean, obviously this company is very important, but like, you don't want it to ruin your relationship with your sister, right? Because that's like a really long-term thing to kind of ruin. And so we sat down and we talked about, our past experiences working together, our working styles, the kind of disagreements we've had in the past, because like we've had 20 years to kind of figure that out, right? And then kind of figuring out how we can communicate with each other better, because hopefully your family can read your mind and they're like completely on the same length as you, but don't risk it, right? Having that honest communication is so easy, especially when you've known someone for so long. And I think it pays off in the long run by quite a lot.
That's a wonderful thing, and you're not only taking on the flower industry head on, you're also taking on that notion. I'm sure that we would love to see more startups with families. And so our next question is that you mentioned you talked very passionately about your team. So how are you able to find the right match with the people that you want on your team? So, and how was the other recruitment process like?
Recruitment is definitely always going to be one of the hardest things you do as the leader of any organization, your department, your organization, startup, whatever it is. I think a big part for us was really looking at the attitude fit rather than qualifications. And really focusing on, is this somebody that wants to grow with the company? Is this somebody that wants to learn? Like even us, we're very young founders, we're first-time founders, so we're always learning on the job. And we honestly look at it as a strength because we never really take anything for granted and we're like, okay, well, what can I do better here? So you're constantly focusing on that growth mindset. And we look to hire that way as well, right? Like regardless of how old that person is or what their qualifications and experience are they willing to really learn on the job? Are they willing to grow with the company? Kind of be flexible, especially because in a startup, like every day looks so different, right? You can't really have one specific position and kind of stick to that. And I think that's what has really helped us hire the team that we have. And a big part of it is also just trusting your team. I feel like a lot of times there's that cultural gap where processes are put in because of not having enough trust, or a founder is so scared to delegate because you have that like control, this mindset that I have to control everything. That's something that we've learned to let go of and really focus on delegating and allowing our team to grow, learn, and make mistakes, so that when those real important moments come in, they're able to make the decisions without making mistakes and learn decisions. So really focusing on that process rather than the outcome, I think has helped a lot in hiring. Of course, we've made mistakes where we've hired people that may not be a fit, but it's okay, right? That's part of the learning. You wish them well and you hope that they find a company that works for them and you find somebody that works within your culture. But like constantly thinking about it and not taking any team member for granted as well, that they are, something that Riya said earlier, they are buying into this idea. It's not just like you are paying them, so it's an obligation from the company, but they are choosing to spend that time and effort being there. While they have other choices. The same way you have other choices, they have other choices too. So you both made that decision to commit to this. So how do you make sure that that commitment is worth it for both? And always really emphasizing excellence, right? Learning is important, growth is important, but always focused on excellence. So the team knows what the goal is as well. Like we are going to be performing at our optimum level, and that's what we expect from the entire team as well, and that's how the company will reach excellence. If everybody in the company is performing at like an average level, then the company will remain average. It's never going to reach that excellence that you wanted to reach.
That's true, ma'am. And so, ma'am,
I think that
sorry, please continue.
Like being someone that people want to work with as well, right? At the end of the day, people say like, don't choose the job, choose your boss. And especially for people as young as us and, in a startup industry, which is in a startup, but in a traditional industry, you really have to be someone that people like want to spend 8 hours of the day with and believe that you will actually take them somewhere valuable. So that's a responsibility you should take seriously when you're starting a venture as well, I think.
Right. So, ma'am, what according to you is the hardest part of your business? Is it the logistics? Is it the acquisition part of the flowers, or managing the e-commerce platform? So, which one would you think has taught you a lot, or was turned out a little tougher than you expected?
I would say the operational intensity of the business, which is very different from a lot of other startups that are completely tech focused. For us, we look at tech as an enabler of the business, right? Again, as Ria said, it's like the startup and traditional world kind of coming together, and really understanding how to make that work, how to make processes more efficient without really just putting in processes for the sake of doing it. Some things are being done a certain way because they actually work, right? And then some things obviously can be made more efficient. I think that's been the biggest learning, to be able to make operations more efficient, less intensive, at the same time not really lose out on the heart of the business itself.
So we just have a few rapid fire questions for both of you individually, and we'll start with Ria first. In one word, what would you say it takes to be an entrepreneur?
Perseverance. Should I elaborate? I don't know what the rapid fire time limit is.
Let's just keep it question and answer, if that's all right.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah, cool. Go ahead.
Who is your biggest inspiration?
My father, I think.
All right. What's the best advice you've gotten?
Show up every day.
All right. And what is your biggest fear as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think being too cautious or being too foolhardy, like drawing that line, is always a fear.
All right, ma'am. So these are some really great answers. Let's move on to Yashoda ma'am now. So, ma'am, what is happiness in one word for you?
That's a deep question. Just fulfillment from within, that you have given whatever you're doing the best.
All right. And what is your best learning as an entrepreneur?
That you have to keep trying. You never give up.
All right. And how would you describe working from home or working online in one word?
I don't like it.
Nobody does, ma'am. And finally, what is one thing that you thought that it really mattered but somehow turned out to be very insignificant?
In terms of like work, or
In any phase, ma'am.
I think I think knowing all the details, like I was always someone who wanted to plan everything before delving into something, but business has taught me that you have to just keep trying with whatever information you have.
All right, ma'am. Thank you so much for your answers. And ma'am, before we wrap up the interview for today, do you have any final words of advice for budding entrepreneurs or people who are on the edge about being an entrepreneur or getting a job?
Wait, so before we move on, is there any coffee hamper or anything like that we get at the end of this? Are you going to tell us who did better?
I think we can surely have that as a vote in our video that we upload.
Okay, sounds good. Just to settle our sibling rivalry, whatever's left over, that will be good.
Sure thing, ma'am.
Yeah. Yasha, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I would just say, have faith in yourself and just keep trying, because that was something that I would tell my younger self, because I was so scared to delve into anything, and being in a business has really changed that. So really, continue to keep trying, whatever it is, whether it's starting a business or in your workplace, and know that, as Ria said, right, just showing up makes a huge difference to whatever you're doing.
Right.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I'm old enough to give a lot of advice, but I think along the same lines, trust that, kind of whatever shows up, you'll figure it out as it shows up. I think, especially with entrepreneurship, you don't have to be like, this is how I'm going to solve, the first step, second step, 100 step, 500 step, because nobody really has all of those answers. But like, give yourself the best chance to say whatever that step is. At that point of time, I'll have enough information and will work hard enough that I'll end up solving it. And believe in yourself, I guess.
Well, those were some really insightful thoughts. And with that, we'd like to end the session for today, leaving our viewers with a lot to think about. And before we end, I'd just like to thank you both once again for taking out time and talking to us. So thank you very much for this wonderful
Of course.
interview.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for reaching out. It was great.
Thank you so much, ma'am.